Cops of Reddit, what's the most bullshit sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? My dad is an officer, and he pulled someone over for speeding and running a red light and they said their breast implant burst. He called EMS to rush them to the hospital and turned out it didn't. It's actually very dangerous if they leak. Do you know why I pulled you over?
My boob exploded.
Alright ma'am, I'm going to need you to calm your tits. A buddy of mine was beaten by security at a casino because they thought he was drunk and belligerent. He was going to his car to get his insulin. He's passed away now, but he never had to work another day in his life after the settlement. Popped a college kid for shitty driving and pulled 100 grams of weed off of him. Also, a 1-pound glass pipe shaped like a huge nail. No biggie. Also find weed under the other college kids in the car. Driver falls on the sword and tells me all of it is his and lets his friends walk free. I like this kid. However, during the search we find packaged addies in the cellophane of a cigarette pack with the top melted closed. Ask kid if he's dealing addies at school. Tell him I'm aware of the prescription pill epidemic. He says no and spins a huge yarn about how he only carries a few on him because Hess had his orange pill bottle stolen so many times. Kid seems like a pretty good dude. I decided to take the X-Files approach. Supervisor tells me pursue charges for dealing, blah blah blah. I tell the kid he has one chance to prove Hess telling the truth. Shows me the broken glass under his driver's seat from a vehicle burglary. Gotta do better. I follow behind him back to his dorm. He lets me in and shows me the busted footlocker he kept them in under his bed. Dunno. Kinda weak. Supervisor's telling me to hurry in and drop the axe. Tell him to do better. He calls one of the soccer team assistants up and we meet him in the locker room. Shows me the little wooden locker which has a broken lock. Assistant coach tells me they have replaced the lock on his cabinet 3 times. Campus security has numerous reports of medicine theft from this kid. Nice. I call supervisor up and tell him I have no grounds to pursue delivery charges. Poor bastard just kept getting his Adderalls jacked, and being the big dumb meatball he was, he started packaging them like that. I end up talking to his best friend, breaking up a house party a couple months later. Friend tells me kid is a stand-up guy who only uses weed due to extreme anxiety. Totally believable from my interaction with him, and has never sold anything in his life. Friend thanked me and told me his buddy spoke well of me. Friend also tells me he had to drive his buddy to the hospital a few hours after I left from a panic attack due to the whole incident. I felt bad for the kid. So now, whenever I see him smoking up in his car in the mall parking lot, I just wave. When do we put you in charge of all police? Was doing a tour as an MP. Not my normal job, but whole other story, and we got called on a domestic. At the house, there is this huge corn-fed guy about 6 feet 4 inches and 275, and a petite Asian girl about 410 and 95 pounds soaking wet. The whole house was in disarray, and the call had come because of yelling heard by the neighbors. She was crying and talking in an Asian language that none of us understood, and kept gesturing toward her huge husband. He wasn't talking. We wrap him up, take him to the station, and are trying to interview him, but he's not saying much. We intend to charge him with domestic assault. We notice somewhere along the way that he has horrible welts all along the backs of his hands and along his forearms. It took a lot of prying, but we finally got out of him that his wife would beat him with wire coat hangers when she was mad, and apparently that was pretty often. He was too embarrassed to admit to anybody that he was being abused by his wife, who was less than a third of his size. We finally got it straightened out, turned her over to the local police, and barred her from base. Hopefully the guy got the help he needed. I always feel for guys in situations like this because people always assume that they are the abusers and not the other way around. Makes you really wonder how many men go silent about their abuse because they're afraid to be arrested themselves or embarrassed. For the record, I'm aware many women also have fear that prevents them from reporting abuse. But we have to admit that a lot of places don't do justice to men who are victims of sexual assault or domestic violence. There was a luggage mix-up at the airport, and he took the wrong luggage. He had to wear a suit that was too big. When I pulled him over, I saw a bag of white powder on the passenger's seat. He said it wasn't his. We called the man who owned the luggage. It was his mother's ashes. One of the funnier ones that I remember. We got a call for a kid, he was 18 and a gang member, brandishing a firearm. He had pulled up his shirt pretending to brandish a firearm to intimidate somebody. The person calling only saw a holster. After we got there, he kept telling us it wasn't a gun but a dildo. We took him down at gunpoint and he was right. He was walking around with a holstered, black dildo. Why? Because he could. Haha. This will probably get buried, but here's my best story. I had a heroin addict who I arrested for a warrant. While searching her purse, I found a small container with a grayish-brown substance in it, consistent with heroin. When I asked her what it was, she started laughing. She told me to test it because it wasn't heroin. I tested it and sure enough, the test came back negative. She explained to me that inside the container was the ashes of her dead cat. She said that when she goes to pick up heroin for her friends, she'll take some for herself and cut the rest with her cat's ashes. Her friends have been snorting or shooting up some of her dead cat. I was driving with my fiancé and we went through a roadblock where they checked registration and shit, and we get to the cops and they ask for our registration. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, so I open up the glove box and right there is a clear, unmarked baggie filled to the brim with catnip. I completely forgot it was there and just froze. Wide-eyed, I turned to look at the cop shining his light through my open window and he's frozen too, just staring at the baggie with this look on his face like really? I just started immediately professing I swear to God this is catnip, you can take it and smell it or test it or whatever, like I swear. And at this point it's just so ridiculous that I start cracking up, and the cop takes it and reasonably deduces I'm telling the truth, and he starts laughing and calls his partner over and tells her what happened, and they both just cackled away for a minute and sent us on our way. Cat weed. Good thing they weren't cat cops. Mid-July in like 2008? Young kid going 93 in a 55 I-swing and he immediately pulls over. Approaching the car, his first words before I can even start speaking, "My dog died, he hung himself. I gotta get back before my mom gets home." Anyway, he calls other family members, his aunt, uncle and 2 cousins come out to the stop, and between all their sobbing, they verify that the dog had actually hopped over the fence on a leash runner and couldn't get back over. Everyone's crying now. They showed me a photo on their phone. Apparently they found the dog and called the kid at work and he just left. I didn't even bother verifying further than that. Cousin drove the kid's car back so they could take care of the dog and prepare for mom. Some said that I should have rode him, but losing an animal sucks enough. He knew he fucked up and adding financial burden to him wasn't going to help him or me. I'm glad there are cops out there who understand both how horrible losing a dog is and how financially hard it is to get a ticket as a kid. Insurance is already too high. Of course kids should be more careful and it's not the cops' fault they got pulled over, but you did the right thing in this scenario. Not really an excuse, but shocked the shit out of me. I've always been told a diabetic with high blood sugar acts the same as someone who is drunk. Get a call for a car all over the road, hitting trash cans on the side of the road and whatnot. We stop the car and get the driver out. He's slurring his speech like no other, can't maintain his balance to save his life. Fails all the sobriety tests, but blew zeros on the PBT. He denied drinking and swears up and down he didn't do any drugs, never mentions the diabetes. We're all scratching our heads and I remember the blood sugar thing. Call medical to our location and sure as shit his blood sugar was 550, and he finally remembers that he hadn't taken insulin in 8 hours. Former marechaussee here, look it up, it is a Dutch thing, police but also military. We also had jurisdiction over the American soldiers stationed here. One day we got called over to a possible case of domestic violence. We arrive at the house and the guy opened wearing only underwear. He told us he and his wife were role-playing. Of course we didn't trust this and asked to see his wife. After denying us entry, we told we would come back with a warrant. He reluctantly agreed to let us enter. So we go in and he opened the basement door and inside was the freakiest sex dungeon. I mean chains, whips, things I couldn't identify hanging on the wall. And in the middle hanging in chains was his butt-naked, gagged wife. We asked her but she told everything was okay. Turned out they were really into some kinky stuff. Asked them to keep the screaming part in the basement and to a minimal. We did the whole thing with a straight face, but as soon as we were in the car, furious wanking ensued? My dad was a cop and my favorite story of his goes like this. He's a young cop in a rough neighborhood. It's so late that the stoplights are flashing red, meaning treat it like a stop sign. Out of nowhere this pink caddy goes rolling through the intersection. My dad pulls him over. A big black dude was driving. The caddy had for interior, dice in the mirror. A real pimp car if you know what I mean. My dad goes, "Sir, do you know you ran that light back there?" And this guy says, "Officer, I do believe I got between the flashes." My dad was laughing so hard he had to let the guy go. Heads up, sad story. Sent to an unresponsive 2-month-old. Work on him unsuccessfully. Dad is obviously inconsolable and all he can say is he woke up and his kid wasn't breathing. Lips are blue, bruising around mouth, nose, and bloodshot eyes. Clear signs of smothering, so we suspect it's intentional. Eventually we find out kid was sleeping on dad's chest, rolled into dad's armpit, and suffocated there. Horrible tragedy but accidental. As much as parents wanted to connect with their kids, don't sleep with them. I've worked too many accidents like this. I'm running booking one night, guy gets brought in for possessing a truly stupendous amount of drugs. I'm talking like 2 Rubbermaid totes full of shrooms, a huge bag of weed, and enough heroin to overdose half the county. Well, says he, I'm a DEA informant and they told me to make the drop so they could be there and raid the crap out of everybody and let me go for helping. Right. Face left please. Guy's like, I'm telling you dude, they're gonna be super pissed that you country retards ducked up their bust. Whatever, get in the holding cell and shut up. About 3 hours later 3 guys show up, DEA agents, they're super pissed that our deputies ducked up their bust. I go back to the holding cell to let the guy out, and he's just like they're super pissed huh? Yeah. Told you so. Not a cop. Family friend was. Pulled a guy over who was speeding profusely. Guy was obviously disheveled. He said he was headed to the hospital because he had a tick on his penis. Cop was confused, but he escorted him there, then waited in the lobby to check on him / see if he was blowing smoke. After a while, he asked the desk what was going on, why it took so long to take a tick off his penis. Her reply, it wasn't on it. It was in it. Not me but a close friend is a state trooper, this happened in a super tiny town miles from civilization. And yes Hess a complete moron. He pulled over a lady for speeding, with her in the car was her passing FTM husband, who was groaning and sweating in the back seat. When he questioned her she said they were on the way to the hospital cause her husband was in labor. Of course he called bullshit cause the guy looked like as manly man as you could get. He started writing a ticket, the whole time the husband is screaming in the back seat and the wife is hollering at Trooper and trying to calm her husband down, and Trooper is mostly ignoring them. Until he hears the words, it's coming out. And the wife started ripping her husband's pants off, and sure enough there was a head. So yeah he had to deliver a baby from a trans man on the side of the road while cows mooed at them from the fence. Thanks for watching, please subscribe for more videos uploaded daily.